All right, welcome back to the RunThrough Trails podcast. We're back for what I believe is episode number 18, and we've got a very special guest today. It's someone from my kind of past, from when I lived over in Canada. Good friend, father, business owner, athlete, many things. And I know that me and Lewis have talked about him quite a few times in other episodes. So amazing to have him on, and nice just for us to have a catch-up because we've not spoken in person for a long time. So welcome to Mike Murphy, our guest today.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's been a long time, hey?
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, time goes so fast, but it's 3 years now or something. Yeah, ridiculous. I mean, it was Amelia's 4th birthday yesterday.
Ridiculous. Yeah, sometimes I laugh when I think time isn't moving that quickly, and then you see someone else's kids, and you're like, but they used to be a baby.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And obviously, we've got Lewis here as well with us on the call. As always, regular co-host. Lewis is out in Gran Canaria at the moment with Gemma, doing a bit of training. So we'll probably have a little chat about Trans Gran Canaria and the races coming up. But how are things over there, mate? It does look nice and warm.
Yes, warm. You can probably tell from my face that it's a little bit warmer than it has been at home, and I keep hearing that it's freezing, so that's always a positive. But yeah, pleasure being here. Really nice to meet Mike for the first time. I've heard a lot of things, not just about him on the podcast, but also how he inspired you into trail running, James. So I'm very thankful because I guess in a weird way we probably would have never have met if it wasn't for Mike, which shows how things do connect in the running world.
Yeah, I was literally just out running right before this podcast, like conveniently, thinking about kind of this chat and the sort of questions we'd ask and whatever, and just reflecting back on it and thinking, yeah, I don't think if Mike hadn't talked me into doing that first race in Canada, I wouldn't be here doing this right now, and life could have taken a whole different path, or maybe not, but I guess that's what we're going to get into. So, Mike, normally what we do with guests is ask for a little bit of background. So should we start off with kind of how you got into running? Because I know you came to running obviously at a slightly later age, and you did a lot of other endurance sports and different things throughout your life. So can you give us just like a brief overview of where you grew up and like your childhood and your career, and just, a little bit of background on who you are?
Yeah, so I grew up in Canada, obviously, in the prairies, though, far from the west coast of where I'm now. So I was there for about 20 years, and when I finished university, I'd been a swimmer as a kid. So I had this really kind of solid aerobic engine and kind of didn't appreciate it. And then I started racing some triathlons when I was in my 20s, right when I was at university. And I kind of realized, I have this engine that I built for the 15 years when I was really little. And I kind of, when I finished university, I thought the middle of Canada and the prairies isn't the place to be, where the multi-sport, running, biking, everything was out on the West Coast. So I moved out. It's been 35 years or so. I've been out here, and I consider myself a real jack of all trades. I kind of dabble in every style of bike racing, kind of done every bit of running. I kind of jump from sport to sport, but before I started trail running, I was racing bikes a lot, mountain bikes, cyclocross, and cross-country running. So, the 8 to 10K, just anaerobic, frothing, hang on for dear life type racing. And I didn't know what a 50-kilometer trail race was. Hadn't even crossed my mind until, I guess I was around 40 years old. And so I think I just was I need a new challenge. And I jumped in an ultra, and I was I need this. I that challenge, the suffering.
I remember us talking about, you introduced me to a load of different sports. You maybe don't even realize it, but I had no clue about running whatsoever when we first met. I was just doing it for a bit of training. And I remember you saying, I think at the time you'd gone down maybe with Sean and some people to do a cross-country race in North Vancouver. And I was kind of nodding along, we're chatting about it. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know anything about cross-country racing. I remember you talking about cyclocross and kind of having a peripheral understanding. I know we talked quite a lot about mountain biking because I know you did some riding on the North Shore and stuff. So we had a bit of commonality there of interest. But, I just, every sport that you talk about taking part in feels like it's got a level of endurance and having to push yourself really hard, but also just gritty, muddy, shitty, difficult, hard racing. That's what I think of when I think of you. That's the kind of racing that you...
A little bit,
yeah. Was that a
Yeah,
choice or like what? Where does that come from?
no, it's definitely a choice. Like I think I've had enough years doing sport that and competing in sport that like the things that I like chase after are more internal, like those really horrible times when you're just like, okay, I need to pull myself together and get through this, rather than just can I get to the end or can I be on the podium? And it's more those challenges. And I find in the really gross races, the really bad ones, you see like a side of yourself that maybe you can't see otherwise. Like this.
That's so true. I think you find out a lot about yourself, particularly in longer races. But I'm interested, Mike, because you mentioned kind of, that anaerobic throttling and, those shorter distances and really pushing yourself to your max, which definitely shouldn't be underestimated, because I think sometimes people, particularly in the ultra trail background, who haven't done it the other way, they haven't come from the shorter distances, they think, 5K, that's nothing. And it's like, go and do a 5K as hard as you possibly can and you'll see that it isn't anything. But I was chatting to someone today and they said, I progressed up from 5K to ultra, and maybe I just went a bit too far too soon, because maybe I didn't find or I found it a little bit too challenging. And in the same sense as what James is experiencing here is like a lot of walking, not so much fun, it's not running. Like, did you just automatically take to those longer distances, and were you happy just to go out and kind of test yourself over those longer distances? Or did you find it like a little bit challenging in the sense of, well, this is a lot longer, a lot slower, it's not as maybe grueling and frothy as the shorter stuff?
Yeah, I think I had at least the training and the coaching that was in the North American system in the late 90s was that went away from what we kind of believe and classically understand now, and they went into this really high intensity interval where no base, it's just massive amounts of intervals. So I definitely came from that just hard anaerobic efforts. That's what a workout was. And then I hopped into this thing that was all aerobic, and it made no sense to me. I was just run as fast as I could till I died, and then I'd walk, and then I'd run as fast as I could. And it took a bit to recalibrate and then focus on building enhancing that aerobic system a bit more, letting the anaerobic kind of fade, because it just wasn't going to make for fun races. It's going to be awful, actually.
So was it when you moved out to, because was it Vancouver that you moved to initially, or?
Yeah.
When you moved to the West Coast, yeah. So was it then that you first entered a trail race, and is it something you were aware of in Saskatchewan before you moved out? Was it something you kind of thought you might have a go at, or just something that you stumbled across because it was so prevalent in Vancouver and West Coast?
Yeah, definitely just stumbled across it because when I moved from Saskatchewan, I really hadn't been running much. I'd been kind of training just for other sports, and then running just kind of happened to. And a friend of mine dared me to run a half marathon, and I was so mad at the end that I was third place in surfer shorts and a cotton t-shirt, and he was just like, "Oh, what are you doing? You need to actually start training." So, but yeah, when I got up to Vancouver, then there was a real cross country scene, and cross country's it's kind of the college system, that's what they'll train for, and they have it in the schools here. And so they're like fell running, but not as hilly, but it's muddy grass, cold, really hard, gritty racing and that stuff. That and some road running. I don't mind. I didn't used to hate road running, but definitely I do better when it's a struggle and it's more varied, the struggle, where there's more obstacles, more things to solve than a metronome pace.
Yeah. Did you find when you went on to, because cross country racing, I mean, it's massive in the UK as well. It's just me. I never, I didn't do any of that when I was at school and whatever. I'm sure I know that Lewis did. And a lot of people do. And it's probably very similar to what conditions and the courses would look like in Vancouver, I could imagine. Challenging weather, muddy, grim. Did you find that translated quite well onto trails from a technical point of view? Because you had the aerobic base, you had the endurance, you had the mindset to do all the training, so you were fit. But how did that feel then going and taking part in a 50-mile race on the North Shore where it's super rooty, technical, loads of elevation? Did you you enjoyed that side of it straight away, or was that a bit of a process to adapt to?
No, because I've been riding my mountain bike a lot on the North Shore.
Yeah,
Like after the 2000 Olympics came and went, and I didn't make the squad. I kind of just picked up my bike and said, "This is what I'm gonna have fun doing." So riding for 4 or 5 hours on the trails was like common, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Well, I'll just like drop the bike and run and see what happens." So like that's probably why I like out of the gate I enjoyed downhill running more than anything. Because on a bike, you see things at such a faster pace, and you can just get a different perspective on the trail. And then I would just hop on, and throw on the running shoes, and that was really fun. Go as fast as I could downhill.
That's really interesting, Mike, because I had a bit of mentoring from a coach last year, around this time last year, actually. We were chatting about downhill running, and we were chatting about James's background compared to some of the other athletes I work with. And it was quite apparent to me early on that James just had this skill for descending. And some of it was intuitive, some of it's confidence. And a lot of people say, oh, you've just got to have the confidence to run down hills. And I did a bit of digging into James's background and was kind of coming up with similar things to what you were just saying, like skiing background, downhill mountain biking, loves being out on the trails. Descending at speed is not something that's unusual to him, but actually going at those faster speeds downhill has given him this vision, this awareness, so that when he descends, when he's running, he just sees things, his sighting's better, he's not afraid. And I think people really underestimate that background. And it sounds something, or certainly my perception here is that it sounds very similar to you. Is that something you see, like almost a crossover of skills from people from that biking background, particularly in the descending element of trail running?
It's strange in Squamish. We don't have a lot of crossover between kind of high performance mountain biking and high performance running. Like I don't know too many. I've seen more often like guys I run with who will pick up a bike and start to ride. So it kind of goes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't, but like within like a couple runs with James with his gazelle springy legs, it's pretty obvious he's going to be pretty nimble and quick on the downhills. When you don't have to commit for more than a fraction of a second to any foot placement, you're probably better off than most.
Yeah. It's definitely something that we both enjoyed a lot. I mean, I still think on almost every run when I'm having to wipe a tear from my eye because the air's cold going downhill about us like just tripping on stumps and talking about how every time you're running downhill and it's cold and you wipe your eye, you can trip on something every time. It's funny how that stuff sticks with you, but it makes a difference, and then you actually think about it. I mean, there's so many different things to chat about. I think with the mountain biking stuff and the lack of crossover, especially the scene in Squamish, I think it's just a cultural thing. Like I think of downhill mountain bikers and enduro mountain bikers, Squamish Whistler scene. It's much more of a like cruise up, bomb the downhills, like lift access bike park. It's more like a snowboarder crowd as opposed to like a gravel cyclist or a road cyclist, even cyclocross, which is more like an endurance sport that crosses over into running. So yeah, I do think it's pretty different. I think like ski mountaineering crosses over into running a lot, and weirdly climbing as well, which I know we're going to talk about afterwards. But less so like free ride skiers in the park. They're probably not racing 5K. So I do think it's like a different vibe. It's like a logger shirt and a beer afterwards versus an athlete.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not
definitely. especially on the coast here, when like you have to, if you're riding at a high level, you kind of have to ride a lot of technical stuff, and maybe that doesn't leave a lot of room for running, or maybe just some cross training for running, or more like hiking up the gondola or something rather than coming down.
Yeah, for sure. So what was your first kind of you said you did the half marathon in like cotton t-shirt, whatever, came third, but were angry that you hadn't won. I know you're competitive. I think we share that a little bit as well. So what was the first race that you rocked up on the start line actually feeling competitive, I'm here to race, I'm here to win, and had a good performance?
Yeah, like actually my first ultra race was a 50 mile and 80K race in Whistler. That it's a defunct race, and that was called Meet Your Maker. And I just kind of wanted a new challenge, and I'd been quite fit. I'd done a bunch of shorter trail races, like some of I think the Coast Mountain stuff was just starting, so that like 10 or 12K, which was right in my wheelhouse. And yeah, I just signed up for Meet Your Maker. Had no idea, but I had friends who were going to crew for me, and my wife and my kids were there. But I still had this very like 10K race mentality. Like my shoes were super tight, and I didn't really carry anything with me other than like one little bottle in my hand, and it got so bad that for the last like 2 or 3 aid stations, I had to stop, take my shoes off,
Oh no.
deal with like the toenails that were getting, and then put on a different pair of shoes. And then 10K later, I'd swap the back, and it was but I got to the finish line and I'd won the race, and I was just like, oh my God, that was so hard. I want to do that again. Kind of like sucked me in.
Oh, I love that. I love that. A lot of people will be put off. I guess the winning helps, right? It's like you still can stop and take the shoes off. But I know one direction we're going to go with this conversation is how much has changed in trail running as a whole. But what I want to understand first, Mike, is how did you quickly adapt? Like, what were your quickest learnings in the sport from what you'd taken from cross country and the road running straight into trail running? You mentioned the shoes being one, tying them too tight, fueling being another one. What were your quick learnings and your quickest wins that other people maybe can pick up on and think, oh, I've been in that situation too?
Nutrition, like I really struggled, and I still do. Like my stomach, I've picked up a few bugs over the years, and like if you can get food and water right out of the gate, like it's never going to be perfect. You can solve the mystery, and then the next race it doesn't work, but like that's the thing. At a certain level, if you can't get enough calories in, you're not racing anymore. You're just self-frag. That's a big one. It's I struggled with, and I think I don't know what you're trying to do, and then something changes and you don't. So yeah, like I guess I was lucky. I had this base fitness, and I liked to suffer, so that worked well. But getting the technical bits that become more and more important in longer races, those ones took a while to like hammer out. Make the mistakes, learn from it. Make the mistakes, and then slowly change things. I was too stubborn to take advice too. That was probably part of it.
I mean, who was it that were you fully self-coached? I'm assuming you were at this time.
Yeah, at that point, I was. I'd had a couple really good like coaches and consultants who kind of reshaped my understanding. Like again, I came from that high intensity interval, like 90s, where like every workout was just anaerobic and like horrible, like peaking and crashing and peaking and crashing every 8 to 12 weeks. So I did have a couple, they were multi-sport coaches actually that I mostly spoke with, but guys who coach currently and even back then, like World Cup athletes and world, like even some longer stuff, but they seem to have a really solid understanding of like ultra endurance events and the systems required for that. And I didn't see a ton of that or at least I didn't have access to pure running coaches that had that type of understanding. They're probably there, but I was coming from multi-sport, so those were the guys that I spoke to and very much got a better understanding of like building a strong aerobic base where you're like building the plumbing so that you can do more and more work. And once I started to wrap my head around that, things started to click.
And was that the main, was the main change overall volume? Because I imagine you were probably doing quite high volume when you were training as a triathlete at that level. Or was it like the addition of long, steady runs or more terrain-specific workouts? Or, because you were probably also still doing some anaerobic intervals, right? I would imagine.
Yeah. I think it was just running volume, because I'd always split it up. Like cycling was always like half, if not more, of my training volume. So to just run more and build that economy, and learn where my aerobic threshold was. Just knowing that threshold and knowing where to like stay underneath it to lift it a bit. And that was kind of the key. It took a bit, but I think I have a pretty good grasp, at least of what works for me. Athlete-wise.
And when you talk about that aerobic threshold, Mike, I assume you're referring to that first turn point and not the second turn point. Obviously, we train both first turn point, And from what I understand about particularly even the collegiate system in America back in the 90s, a lot of it was that high anaerobic work, a lot done at LT2 and above, lactate threshold 2. And there was a monumental shift kind of late 90s, early thousands, even in collegiate sport where a lot of tempo running came in, a lot more steady state running came in, and that volume increased, and we've seen that change over a period of time. Is that similar to what you're describing here? You were kind of part of that
Exactly.
era, that revolution.
I was part of the earlier, like somewhat in the earlier system where, the coaches were kind of getting like overrun with this data from science in North America that was about how like 4 times 3 minutes as hard as you can is the way to build this fitness. And by the time I went through many cycles of like peaking and burnout, then I'm like, okay, this isn't right. And started to learn a bit more about, just taking control of that, like of how I want my body to perform and what kind of training I should do, understanding a bit better, like what those, inflection points were and what they meant. And but definitely that first inflection point. I think too many people focus on that second, the anaerobic, that second inflection point.
Yeah, and the first one's so important with trail and ultra. I mean, we talk about it all the time with James. I'm fortunate with James, obviously coaching where he gets it, like he really does understand it, but so many people don't. And I see it time and time again where they can't sit below it. And if you can't do that and you go to race and you can't sit below it, it's only a matter of time, especially if you can't fuel adequately and, you start climbing too hard, that things just collapse. But I think there's a misconception as well where people feel like in order to train it, you've got to be above it. And like a lot of the time spent is either on it or slightly below in order to push that threshold. So it's kind of this westernized culture of like harder is always better. And that isn't the case. And it's like that time under intensity that's crucial. And sometimes they sacrifice that time or duration for more intensity when that isn't really the answer.
Yeah. That's a really hard point to try and explain because like, I guess in our like base understanding of things, if you push harder, you'll get better at pushing hard.
Yeah.
And you have to really break it into the energy systems and what fuel you're using. And, but that's the one thing about James, like from day one, when we started running, he was willing to just take that in and understand it. He was the most disciplined guy at almost all the workouts. It was really impressive to see him just hold back and do what he needed to do instead of chasing after someone who was going like full tilt in an interval that should have been not full tilt.
So it's good that you say that because I would leave every workout thinking like, it's tricky because even if you know that's the right thing to do, and like we talk about this all the time, the purpose of every run, like if you go and run a recovery run hard, you're an idiot because it's not the purpose of the run, and then you can't do your session as hard, and it's counterintuitive to do that. But still, holding back in sessions when other people are kind of going all out, you always will leave, especially like the ego in the back of your head a little bit, thinking like, probably could have given a bit more today. And even though you know it's right to not necessarily always do that, there's a part of you that kind of wants to. And I think the trick is to almost like bank that for race day, because that's kind of, that's what that's for. But too many people use that every week, every session, and it's gone.
It's really hard because, we don't just run for this race result. We run for, a million different reasons. And there might be someone who has no interest in performing well in a race. They might do one because everyone else is, but they want to win the workout. And that's where they get satisfaction. And that's the thing they like. And they just want to kill it okay, great. But if your goal is to perform well at a race, you have to have that discipline or it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I think James touched on a good point. I'm sure we'd all agree here is that I see it time and time again. Those who perform in the workout, they crush the workout. They don't translate to racing and they're baffled by it. They don't understand it. But from my coaching perspective, it's so obvious why that is the case. And I think one of the things you touched on there, James, it's not just the physical cost of that. It's also the mental cost of showing up at every workout and emptying the tank and not having that mental energy to go to a race fresh and being able to dig deep, like you said, Mike, being able to suffer because you've suffered so much in training. It's like there's nothing left.
Yeah. There's an American running coach, Steve Magnus, who I really like some of the stuff he writes, and he used to have a podcast. And I just remember something that he wrote stuck with me. It was like, you can only see God once in a while. Save it for a race. And I'm like, that's a really good way to put it, is like, if you're cross-eyed and barely finishing an interval, like that was your race effort that's gone now.
You know what? That even applies within a race. I used to think about, because again, another thing you introduced me to, Mike, is Steve Magnus, which is cool. And now like read his books, listened to all his podcasts and stuff. And I agree. I like a lot of his training philosophy. He's pretty active on like Instagram, which isn't necessarily my favorite thing in the world, but I can't really disagree with anything he says. He just gets it. But I think it even applies within a race, especially a longer race, like in a marathon. Excuse me. I think people kind of burn they burn those matches at 5k, 10k, 15k. They surge at halfway because they're feeling fresh and they're not thinking about the last 3-4 miles where they're gonna die, and they need to keep that extra spark of motivation, that last little bit of energy, that bit of mental capacity to really like grind it out. You just got to save that for when you really need it and not use it up, not get carried away. And it's massive. It's really important.
It's so hard to teach that or have someone like that discipline to be patient. Like I've only managed like once or twice where I've actually held back enough to have the perfect like splits. It just doesn't, you kind of chase someone a bit, and if someone's not like used to like how pacing can kind of affect your race, and it's really hard to convince. Like even my daughter's just like, slow down. This is not the pace to go when you're. But it doesn't make sense. Well, I just want to run with that person, so I'm going to run as fast as them right now. But that's going to pay tenfold in the back half when the wheels come off. It's like you almost have to have an athlete have success with that really patient strategy to then build on that. Because if they don't ever try it and have success, nobody's going to believe that that's the way to have the best outcome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm so passionate about this area because, one, I've seen the impact of it on my own career, and I believe racing is a skill, it's an art, it's an intuition. You've got to understand every element of it, you've got to be patient. But I'm a strong believer in how we do anything is how we do everything. So if the more you practice that in training, the more you understand it in training, the more you just alluded to, Mike, the more you see those results in training of people coming back to you. Oh, they do come back to me in the second half of the session. Oh, also that's what happens in racing. And the more you trust in that, it just starts to happen almost intuitively. Even like I'm a big fan of Magnus's work too, especially the book writing. I'd say he's probably become more famous from his books than he has from his coaching, ironically.
Yeah.
Gemma's actually reading the latest one out here. She's going through that. We've just been chatting about it just before. But I think some of his earlier stuff on Instagram, as James said, one of the best things I've ever read, I'm not sure if it was Magnus or it might have even been Brad Stolberg who does some work with, was like, even from easy run-ins, going out the door and making your first couple of miles the easiest. Now, it sounds so simple, but so many people we see, James, on Strava, they don't do that. They go out the door and they hit it. It's a lack of confidence. It's a lack of belief in what they're doing. And just easing into those runs, it becomes how you do everything. And once you start doing that with everything, you can then start applying it to races. That's my view on it anyway.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective that like, if you don't have the confidence to kind of shape your training like that, like I wonder how that bleeds over into life. Like maybe just that confidence or, that's probably true. It probably does bleed into every other avenue of life.
But then I guess then there's the flip side of when you do really need to give it everything, whether that's on race day or at the end of a race or whatever, which again, I think is something that all three of us, well, you guys have never met, so you've probably not talked about it, but I've spoken to Mike about a lot, and I know we speak about a lot, Lewis. Like, I know you don't know each other, but your philosophies and thoughts around like racing and strategy and that side of running, rather than just the get fit, train, hit the splits, blah, 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 is something that you both kind of think about a lot and value a lot. And the competitive aspect of actually racing another person, and the games that you play mentally where picking up the pace just as you're coming around a corner so that when they get to that corner, you've broken them a little bit, all that sort of stuff that we used to talk about a lot. I honestly, there's not a single race where I don't do that, think about it, try to implement it. It's great. Like, it's one of my favorite parts of racing. And I know you kind of feel the same, Lewis, as well. Like, you never really felt like you were necessarily the most physiologically gifted on the start line in a 1500 or whatever, but you knew that you had the kind of mental capacity and the strategy and the confidence to race well. I just think it's something you guys have got a lot in common. I've learned a lot from both of you from that point of view. And again, it's just for me one of the most fun things so much more fun to race than it is to run a time. And I think if you can get yourself in a position to be able to do that, like even just chatting to you, Mike, about like back and forth with, I mean, local guys like Gary Robbins or Nick Elson or whatever, coming back year after year and racing these same races against the same guys. There's something just cool about that. It's like quite a niche scene at the time. I've not really asked a question there, but it's just something that I think we all share in common and interest in racing.
Like you can only enjoy, like, well, I speak for myself here, is that like I do like time trialing, but if I really want to get the most out of myself, like I want a battle. I want someone to push me. I want to go a really dark place and have to like get through that to succeed. So
I 100% agree, Mike. I think if I went and did a time trial in training, for example, let's say over 5K, I'd be like a minute and a half down on what I could run in. It was like it was mental. Like it just didn't appeal to me. That's not why I was in it. And James, you make some good points. I think in training you can go there from time to time, but you can also work on that mental toolbox without having to bury yourself. You know, you can go into a session and you can run hard up a hill and then run hard off the other side of it without really destroying yourself for the entire session. But you can practice that skill within the session, which is then going to apply to the race. But I think this is why I love ultra trail so much, considering I didn't do it when I was younger as an athlete, is because I see this as a big gap. I see this where it's a real level playing field. If you can get your tactics right, if you can listen to the body, if you can get your strategy right, I just see it as like, it's not just a level playing field. You can outperform people who are significantly more gifted than yourself physiologically, because it is just a different tactical sport to say an 800 meters on the track, 1500 meters on the track. You pretty much know every time which three men and women are going to be at the forefront. It's a physiology test. Ultra trail, it's a different ball game, and tactics plays a huge, huge part in that.
Yeah. I also, that something that, you know, I was lucky when pretty early on in like my athletic career, when I had a coach, we worked on like visualization, and that's a tool that I still use. And that, especially that, like how to suffer and what it's going to feel like, and when you're going to do the thing you want to do, being able to see that in your brain, in your mind's eye ahead of time and go, okay, this is going to feel really bad right there. But anyone who's with me is going to feel just as bad. So I'm going to drill it right there. And that's going to be the spot. And having work, you know, see that and work through it and have that plan and know how it's going to feel ahead of time is like, it's gold.
That's one of them. You know, that's one of those special things to remember that I think a lot of people forget, is rather than getting bogged down in how hard it feels, how much you're struggling in that moment, and assuming that everyone else feels great, remember, or even tell yourself, you feel better than they do, and now's the time to push. Like if this is the hardest moment for you, then it's even worse for them. So if you just give a little bit extra now and create that gap, a lot of the time that's all you need, because these races are so long. Like you see someone going and it breaks you mentally. It's so difficult. I think that's why, again, the pacing helps so much. Like if you can pace longer races evenly and run consistently, the number of people you run down helps so much with that motivation as well, rather than kind of running scared from the front. That's what my best races have always been. I've always run through the pack. Squamish 50, the last race that I did before I left Canada, must have ran through like 40 people.
That was one of the most amazing races to watch. And when I was crewing for you, to see you just like be so disciplined and still running the pace that was, you know, really fast, but everyone else went out too hard, and you staying so disciplined and then just motoring through people in the back half of that. Like it was impressive. It was maybe one of the best like actual like races where you see, you know, your friend or the person you're cheering for just like, chasing the field down and eating them up. It was pretty good.
It's such a good race. Like, we'd run every inch of that course 50 times. It's right at the back door, isn't it? I mean, that's where all the shop sessions were. And it's classic. And I still remember coming through, there's probably 5 aid stations, let's say, and the last one was in Valleycliff, which was where I used to live. And again, trails that we'd run 100 times, Mike, and you were there crewing, and I can't remember, whatever, like gave me a couple of gels and stuff. And I remember getting to that point, being absolutely broken, completely done, and thinking, I just want to cruise in now. I'm happy with third. Like, this will do. I've worked really hard. This was grim.
Yeah.
I've come through that bonsai climb section, which is just, I remember you saying it's exposed, like it's rocky, you're always in the sun. It's always a really tough section. And it's this nothing climb, Lewis. It's tiny. But it's just the point in the race where it comes makes it really challenging for whatever reason. It was always a really tough point. Come through there, past more people, feeling good, but like not feeling like you really got any race left. And then hearing the one thing I didn't want to hear from Mike, which is like, he's just around the corner, you're definitely going to catch him, pick it up. And I was like, oh, I've got to really try now. Yeah, stuff like that.
I was gonna tell that to you even if he wasn't that close.
I know. And that's the thing. I didn't fully trust you. And I knew, as I was running up, I was like, I know what he's going to say. But he was just there, to be fair, and I caught him. And I still remember catching up with Brandon in the car park and seeing him. And he must have been in the lead for the entire race and just thinking like, I'll just go for it. Sprinted past him. I was in first for about 3 seconds, and then he was fine. He was like totally fresh. Dropped me horrendously. But yeah, I mean, yeah, good memories, man.
There's a big psychological element to this, though, isn't there? Like, as much as everything that's going on physically, even the fact, like, I remember Wild Struble, where I went to crew for you, James, there's similarities to what you're saying here with Mike when I was crewing for you in that race, and you were chasing down Brennan, and he had like 90 seconds on you at the last aid station. And I said, look, he's got 90 seconds on you, but the rate you're moving based on the last aid station, you're going to catch him. And the psychological boost for you there is huge, but also the psychological boost for your crew, which it's coming across. You can see the positivity from them around that. Whereas the other person who's getting hunted down, which I always refer to this, I said it to Loughborough, our university, before they went to the Bucks Cross this year. I said, be the hunters, not the hunted. Like, if you're the hunted, everything about you is tense. Everything about you is worried about what's coming from behind. If you're the hunter, everything's in front of you and you're chasing it down. But also, when you're the hunted, the people around you know that as well. And the vibes that they're giving off is often not good. And the first question I ask is, how far is he behind? And even that statement alone, compared to how far is he ahead? Like, I'm chasing him down. It's just such a big psychological bonus. And my old coach was brilliant. As he said, trust me, you will be able to get more from yourself physically when you are running people down than you can the opposite. And it comes back to Mike's point of being able to dig deep. Like, maybe you can dig deep because you've put yourself in that position where you can go psychologically deeper because there's so much positivity going on around you. Yeah. And maybe that's just it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the more important part of being a crew member for someone who's racing. It's not like handing them gels and stuff. You're like an accountability partner. It's like, I know it's hard, but like you've got more, so go on. And you know it's coming, but that's what you need as well. You don't want it, but you need it. And then afterwards you're like, yeah, I needed that. That really helped, because I wouldn't have picked up like that if it wasn't the case. I always think that's a huge thing. Did you have like a little group that that you train with, Mike, when you were kind of in the peak of your racing, sort of 2000?
I didn't really.
15
I didn't.
Period? No, you just solo.
I was like always kind of a solo trainer. Like, the value for me, knowing how like anaerobically dominant I was up until 2012 type thing, I knew that I needed to just really, really like focused on what I needed to do to strengthen my aerobic base. And you could run in a group and all of a sudden it's faster than you want to go, or it's like you're just doing the things that aren't the best for your system. And when you get to a certain level, like in Squamish a decade ago, there was 2 or 3 people that would run at that pace. And if you don't have the same work schedule, and there's just nobody to train with. So I guess I was fine with it though. I was happy to be putting in those big days by myself, because I could be very, very specific on what I thought I needed to do.
Nice. Have you got like a memory was there a particular session that was a staple that you'd recycle, like, every month, or in a big build for these type of like 50k to 50 mile, like Squamish 50, Neenacker type races? Is there anything that stands out? I know of a few of them, but
Neenacker, the first time I raced Neenacker, like I did some things that turned out to be really positive, good habits, and then I kind of continued with them. And if you have the chance to like really, really learn the course you're going to race because it's in your backyard, do it. And so, that first mean actor, I'd done that 150-mile race, and it was just like I did no prep for it. I think I ran like 2 hours as my longest run leading into that. So mean actor, I thought, I'm going to like actually prep for this. And I looked at Ellie Greenwood's splits because I always saw this, like when you look through the results, like a real like fade at the end. Everyone was dying at the end, even the leading men. And then you looked at Ellie, who had this shockingly fast course record that was as fast as like all but 3 of the men. I'm like, what is she doing? And that was like near her year where she like won the World 100K Championship. She won Western Straight. And she was just on this tear of decimating every race. And I just looked and I'm like, oh, Ellie knows something that nobody else seems to do. And I went out and broke the course down, and I really practiced pacing, what it felt like through all those sections, and just like essentially running race simulations like for the 2 months leading up to it. So that I just got everything dialed. And then when I got on race day, it was just, I had little chunks. I didn't have to focus on the whole thing. It was just, I know this next hour. And I know I can run this quick on it, and I can relax, and I can do that. And then boom, and the next section. And all of a sudden, like 2K from the finish. And like somehow I just kind of got lucky that was a system that worked for me, was to like break it down, small bites, and just like go over it as often as I can. So it's a general system rather than one thing in particular. But
yeah.
I love this, Mike, and part of me thinks that we've been separated at birth, really. We systemize things, we break it down, and even for the race that my wife is prepping for, I won't give too much away, but I go to last year's results and I don't just look at the leading females, I look at the position they finished, but then I look for standout people who finished ahead of them and started behind them. And I say, right, what did they do? What did their splits look like? And then I break that down into sections, and then I'm sure you're familiar with James's munter rating and all that type of stuff. We call it muntering now because it's become so popular. Then I break that rate down and I look at the speed at which they've gone out at compared to the speed of these later sections, and I'll break it down into time for those sections. And I don't think you are lucky. I think you've just got it in a system where you've worked it out. And I look at it and it stares out at me on the page. I'm like, oh my God, that's so obvious. That's the way to run it right there. And it's not actually rocket science. And then when I compare that to training, so we go out this weekend and I'll say to Gemma, just go and run. And then we'll analyze the rate at the end, and we'll come back and I'll say, by the way, just to let you know, that rate's as fast as you need to run in Chianti average. And it's almost like mind blowing. She's like, what? No way. And I'm like, yeah, but people just go way too hard. You can't go out at 16, 17, and then expect to average 14 and a half if you've gone out at 17. Like, it's so obvious, but I think that's where you were probably onto something well ahead of your time. And to kind of let you into something here, which I've heard on the grapevine, I've heard that people are now bringing in statisticians and are making like ghost runners for themselves, so that they're going to have like this ghost runner that shows them how to run the course, because I think people are now starting to catch up. Maybe you were onto something, Mike, early on.
Like part of that, I guess the lucky part of that for me was that I didn't have any expectations. I was just new to the scene. So it wasn't like I felt I had to keep up with anyone. I was just doing this mathematical, this is how I'm going to run it, and I have no idea where anyone else is going to be. So it's probably pretty easy for someone who's established, who should be like racing at the front or racing here. That's going to be harder for them to change their system. It has to have a lot of confidence in it, because it means you might be in 12th after the first checkpoint rather than in second.
I think that's one of the main keys to proper pacing. It's the same for me. Like, I came into these races just zero expectation, already a bit older, hadn't really done loads of running, just, again, we even talked about like Janelle in that first Whistler Alpine Meadows 50K, who was like the favorite female. And it's something we talk about a lot, Lewis, obviously because of Gemma's training too, but a lot of the time the women are much better at evenly pacing races because men are just idiots and go out too hard. So that was something we even talked about, years ago, looking at some of the races out in Canada. And it's that same idea of just, consistent pacing, but not having an ego, where if you go through the first aid station in 20th, it doesn't matter if you know you're on pace for a time that would have won last year, because you know you're going to pass everyone. So, I mean, we're repeating ourselves, but it's probably the most key thing for ultra distance trail races, especially when you've got like a load of elevation, weird conditions, different things going on. Being able to run to feel and know what that pace feels like is just so essential, because it's not the same as looking at 5K splits in a road marathon. You can't do it that way.
I guess where that leads us to is a really good point about how the sport has developed and it's become so competitive at the front, because what we are starting to see now is, and I think this is the biggest problem, is if you generally think that you can win the race, you kind of have to be in the mix now. That's what we're seeing in these races. You can't be too far back because there's too many people up there to pass. But too many people probably think they can win the race who shouldn't be there. So the people who really benefit from that are the ones who come and get like a podium or a top 5, top 10, who sat back and benefit from all those people going off hard. And now we're just seeing like a ridiculous amount of people who are able to go to the front, and 1 or 2 of them are able to stick it. And they've got such a gap that maybe the people who've set off steadier are not able to catch that up. I'm not sure if that's what you're seeing, Mike, but I assume the game has changed massively from even 2014, 2015 to present day.
Oh yeah. Like a decade ago, you could have one really fine-tuned, strong tool in your toolkit, and then you could kind of be a little mediocre in the rest of things, and you could still do really well. Like you could either be really fast on the road, or you could be really good in technical stuff, or you can. And now, like you have to have a really quick road pedigree, and then you have to have a bunch of other things you're good at. It's just, it's not. You just can't be a one-trick pony anymore. You really have to have, some skills all around. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, the game has changed. Like you see Christian Allen from the US just ran a 2:9 marathon, but we saw the detriments of that in OCC this year when he went out hard, right, James? Like you could see perception of effort wasn't there, but this is the sort of standard we're looking at now across the board. But they've got every tool in their locker, and it's becoming higher quality fields. But that's good because it's driving the sport up, and I guess it attracts people like yourself, James, who come to it, who maybe wouldn't have come to it before, and that's what we're seeing. Just more and more people come into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a joke, the depth now. It's absolutely insane, and I don't know if it is the same because Squamish and Vancouver, like, it's not you're quite isolated over there. Like Vancouver is a city, but it's not like that populous, and Squamish is pretty small. And there's a bit of a scene around Whistler, but it's pretty much Gary's races and a few other bits and pieces, or at least, was always my perception, and some small local stuff. Like, have you seen much of a change at the Coast Mountain Trail races and stuff like that, Mike, in terms of the standard, or is it just Alex and Sean and Nick winning everything still?
No, the last couple of years, Squamish was the national championships for 50K and maybe 50 mile. And I saw a bunch of names that I didn't recognize. And they were people who had strong road pedigrees. Maybe they'd spent time racing in Europe. They weren't just like the standard names that I'd seen. And everyone was faster. People were really flying. So it was that road pedigree coming in and experience racing other places. So, definitely a change.
I mean, there's a deep little scene as well. It's an interesting thing to kind of fall into, because we've got to touch on the store, and we'd never fit in this into an hour. It was never going to happen.
I know.
To lead into because this is how we met, through Capra, through the running store in Squamish, and then obviously the group runs and some of the guys we were training with and blah blah blah. When did you decide to open the store, and how did that come about? When did you move over from Vancouver up to Squamish and relocate?
Yeah, so I had actually been living in Maple Ridge because my wife and I wanted to start a family, and we couldn't afford a big house with a yard in North Vancouver at the time. So we moved to Maple Ridge. And when my girls kind of got to a certain age, I was realizing that I was traveling to do all the fun things. I could kind of live wherever I wanted for work, but I was driving to do the fun things. And then there came a tipping point where I wanted to be up in Squamish, and just the serendipity just struck when my business partner Selena started talking about opening a store, and I had some other friends who I talked to about it. I was like, this is perfect. And just within 2 months, life just boom, switched, and opened the store, moved to Squamish, and it's been amazing.
That's another one that I think me and Nicola say this to each other all the time because we're forever moving. Live in the place where you want to be doing the cool stuff. Don't be commuting to the cool stuff. Commute to work.
Yeah.
Like commute to the city. Don't live in this. I mean, it seems like everyone's taken that advice in Vancouver over the last few years post-COVID, because looking at the property prices in Squamish, oh my God, it's gone absolutely wild. But just because it's such a class place, like the access to, I know you've not been, Lewis, I know I've talked about it quite a lot, but if you're into any sort of form of outdoor sports, you are literally talking about world-class rock climbing, mountain biking, skiing, snowboarding, water sports, trail running, and I'm probably missing loads of stuff as well. The amount of stuff you can do is just ridiculous, and the lifestyle's awesome. But yeah, basically how I ended up meeting Mike was I bought my first pair of trail running shoes from the store. I bought them from Selena, and they were wrong.
Yeah.
And I came back and you said, you shouldn't have sold you those. Here's some proper ones that work, which was nice. And I always remember that being like a really good retail experience, like bringing a product back, feeling a little bit awkward, kind of like, oh, not really sure these were the right thing. And then the owner of the store just kind of being super honest and saying, yeah, that's not the right thing. You should have these, take these instead. That was a good start to things. My first pair of La Sportivas. And then obviously you ran really regular shop runs. And easy runs on Saturdays, sessions Tuesdays.
Yeah, we used to have a Tuesday, regular Tuesday interval session, which I'm almost considering starting back up. It just, the stars aligned. Like at that time, there was enough people who were trying to run fast, who had kids that they could drop off and then go to a run workout on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. And we had such a good group for so many years there. And that was kind of the one that I took charge of. I didn't lead the Saturdays and the Sundays as often, but Tuesdays was the fun one for sure.
And was that just like, because obviously there's a little bit of the business side of things, obviously having like a bit of a community around the store, obviously their customers, but I don't know, I wouldn't imagine that was like your main intention with it. And you've also said you quite like training alone. You were, a lot of the time you wouldn't even be running the sessions, like you'd be coaching them, leading them, whatever. What was the idea behind that? Was it just building a bit of a group? Was it just something fun to do?
All of the above. Now we can look in hindsight and see how important are like the more fun social run groups are. They're like a key component. There's less people interested in doing a structured workout, but that's where I was in my own training. And so that's what I liked. And the fact that there were like 15 or so people who were on the same page and showing up every week. It was really fun. I like that. And even if I wasn't running, it was great to kind of, push everyone, or at least get the crowd kind of excited. It was good times.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we have that. You've probably seen, Mike. There's a big run club phenomenon now in the UK. Everybody's part of a run club, but we still pride ourselves on doing a track session once a month, free of charge. For our community to come down and put on a harder session, because I believe there's also a lot of people out there who don't understand or know how to do those harder sessions. So you provide a lot of value there for people, but they're also fun to coach. I don't run them, I just coach them. And it's great to see people pushing themselves and getting uncomfortable when maybe they wouldn't. But it's amazing how those sessions also have translated, because James tells me about those sessions still to this day. And I think, I don't know if I'm right, maybe this is going to lead to a question. I think I might have a bit of a Mike Murphy inspired session on Gemma's planning Gran Canaria this week.
Nice. Good.
So we are going to do
4 up, 2 down, 2 rest.
So we're going to do.
Oh, those are good ones.
Well, actually, let me get it right. Let me pull up my session just to make sure I get it right. I think James, you're not a million miles off that there.
I mean, thinking back, the ones that I remember, it's the Beck's Hill sessions were always the most brutal, but I feel like they do just get you fit. 4 up, turn around, 2 down, hard, 2 minutes rest.
Okay. I shall tell you. It's loading up now. And I'll tell you the purpose behind it. Obviously, I've not just included it because it was one of Mike's sessions. And I'm like, I'll just throw it in there because James has told me Mike did it and it was a good session. We've got 5 minutes uphill and then hard back down to the start, taking you around 2 to 2.5 minutes to get back down. 2 minutes recovery, repeat 5 times.
There you go.
So that's the session. And the purpose for that is because we want to, Gemma's going to race Chianti where the downhills are going to be fast. We know that, service road downhills. There's going to be a lot of eccentric loading on the quad. She's going to have to run fast down there. So we want to put some of that stimulus in there. And I just believe if you're doing it continually without the recovery at the bottom, you can't then run the reps hard enough to get the right change that you're looking for, the right adaptation, the right stimulus. So James mentioned this is something you'd done, Mike, in the past. And I thought, you know what, I really like the sound of that. So the sessions that you were doing back then are still inspiring in people's programs to today, if that's the right type of session.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And like, I used to love those for that eccentric loading, so that, you know, like that is so specific to running those downhills hard and economical, where you're relaxing your core and you're not like crushed in trying to breathe while you're, you know, fighting to stay forward, but you're relaxed and you can like let gravity do its work. But, you know, that feeling of getting to the crest of a hill and then wanting to just ease off a bit for the first bit of the downhill. And I'm like, that's like, fight against that. Just push back against that, like hit the crest and drill it and just see what happens. And everyone else just wants to slow down for a few seconds.
Exactly.
And that was kind of the fun.
Yeah, that's the free time in the race. It's that you crest over the hill, the hard bit's done, now you calm down. No, you don't. That's when you go. Because it's brutal. Like, it is very different from hard up, jog down. Like, it's a totally different thing. And even just getting used to that sensation of running downhill hard, not only the fact that the faster you run down, the more rest you get, which is always nice, but also that like you're a bit blurry eyed. Your breathing's 9 out of 10. It simulates it so well.
Yeah. And cardiovascularly as well. Like most people's heart rate does drop slightly, even on that downhill when you're running it hard.
Oh yeah.
So it shows that and I think that's the problem in races. Like early on, people think, oh, I'm recovering on these downhills, I can run these hard, but they don't realize the muscular cost to that. Because they're just thinking, oh, well, I'm breathing fine. Okay. And all the research shows now that the biggest difference between particularly the elites and the mass is that the mass slow down more on the descent in the second half. And actually the people who perform better slow down the least on the downhills in the second half. That's even for the elites. But they've managed that pacing of the downhills better in the first half than the second half. It's actually the uphills, there isn't as much of a difference as people think. But that's because if you think about, I don't know, OCC, James, there's only so fast you can go up those hills, right? Like, and then when you slow down to a walk, percentage-wise, that's not too much difference between what people are doing as a power hike. Whereas on the descents, you think about how fast some of those people go down those descents early on compared to walking them later on when they're completely destroyed and cramping. There's then a heck of a difference between the time that's being lost. So yeah, I think that type of session just stuck out, and I thought really like the sound of that. So we're gonna give it a try, as you said, Mike. Try it out, see if it works, and
I used to always like, I feel strongly about this because I've struggled with it, is when I'm not in great downhill shape. Again, those breathing muscles, I start to use my intercostals more than my diaphragm because I'm not leaning into it enough, because I don't have that eccentric snap to really let gravity go. And if you're struggling, you're doing a 10, 20 minute downhill and you're fighting it and you're holding your core tight, that's exhausting. Those breathing muscles that can contribute to a massive amount of fatigue the next time you're going back uphill. And so if you can get used to like, oh, how do I relax into this? Not just the like pure cardiovascular and muscular, but like how to relax, go fast, relaxed. And that's always been a big part of that for me too.
It ties into all of it because it's the confidence on, especially technical downhills. Obviously, it's different if we're talking just like blasting down a service road, but the confidence to move quickly on the technical terrain, to be in the right position of being upright, nice and forward, like short contact time on the ground, all the stuff that we talked about in like the downhill running clinics that I know Lewis does the same type of stuff as well with a lot of his clients and with the groups that he coaches and with Gemma a lot as well. Coupled with the relaxation, because the other piece of it is if you're also kind of tense and nervous about the technicality of the turns and not tripping and not falling, and you're kind of like stressed about going downhill, it's like it just exponentially increases how fatiguing that downhill is, when really what it should be is really quick and recovery, as long as your legs can take that eccentric loading. Because I used to suffer a lot with like calf cramping in the second half of races, but and I remember saying to you again, Mike, like, what is it? What can I do to change? And you were like, run for another 5 years. Like you're just not, you're not running enough. Your body can't do it. And you were right. Like it's fine now. But it's so true. There's some patience there. Like it's a lot of load for your muscles running hard downhill.
Yeah.
And it does just take a lot of time.
Yeah, and you had this really freakish like trajectory of success and progression. And I do remember like you were a little bit frustrated, or not frustrated, but you wanted this like, how do I get better so much quicker? I'm like, oh man, this is time. Imagine where you're going to be in a decade with some ups and downs, and just time. It just builds a different athlete. Yeah,
definitely. Timeless advice, eh?
Timeless advice.
Yeah, thinking about it on a daily basis. I mean, obviously the other thing, it's kind of where we started the conversation, I suppose, before we pressed record, is the other part of life that we also share is obviously having, well, you got 2 daughters, I've got 1 daughter, but wanting to kind of live that outdoor lifestyle that is such a huge part of what brought you to Squamish and why you're still there, and kind of a lot of the choices that me and Nicola are making in life around where we want to live and what we want to do. And I know, like, you've always done cool stuff with the girls. You do a lot of climbing as well. I know you get out on the bikes a lot and stuff like that. But I still remember you going out for their birthday, rather than it being like going to a soft play with a load of other kids. It was like, let's put a tent up on the Chief and camp on a vertical wall, or let's take them climbing, or let's go on an adventure. That's just, where does that come from? I mean, I know it's kind of what you're into yourself, but do you see that now as they're growing up and getting older, that it's kind of become part of who they are? And
I think so. Yeah. Like, they just accept that there's so many fun things to do in Squamish, and like sometimes what people will label as like a risk or risky or scary really isn't. And you can do those things safely and have fun. And then it's kind of like eye-opening, like, oh, you just slept on the side of that rock face and it was totally safe. We've never done it. It's just, like, for example, Grace has decided she's going to run the Squamish 23 this year.
Really?
And we did her longest run ever on Monday. And of course, we got totally lost in the snow. What should have been like an hour 45 was an extra hour. It's like, this is pretty typical for adventuring in Squamish. So.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that that they were running. So Grace is doing the 23K. Interesting.
She wants to, and she's committed. She's been putting in the training, even when I'm not there to kind of check in on her. She's still doing it. So, and then there's Charlie, who just wakes up off the carpet after a 3-hour nap and can just drill it. She's just full tilt engine.
That's good to see, though. That I like the way you said, Mike, that she's doing it off her own accord as well. I think that's where people get success in this sport, is when they really want to do it, they enjoy what they do, and that culture of being outdoors. I think that outweighs a lot of things for me. No matter how good you are running wise, if you appreciate the environment and where you are, and you like being out there for hours, I think you can go deep. And I think that's what separates a lot of ultra trail runners. So it's great to hear that they're now entering into that world of unknown of what happens after 3 hours of being out on the trails when you've never done it before. It's cool.
I'll see. I'm trying not to push them into any one sport. Like, or certainly, like, I kind of keep them in my, field of play. But it's like, especially in Canada, that philosophy of like no early specialization. Just don't specialize kids. Because I was a victim of that. So I don't want to do that to my girls and let them sample everything. And now's that age where they start to pick from the things that you've shown them what they are drawn to. And that's what's happening with my girls now.
Nice. So speaking of which, I guess to wrap up, like, what are you up to nowadays? Are you still getting out running? Is it still heavy on the climbing? Are you in the gym every day training? Like, what's the focus? I know you must have something going on.
Yeah. I've been riding a lot. Like, I kind of got back onto some really technical fast riding last year with a friend of mine, and probably shouldn't be doing it because that's where I broke more bones than any other sport combined, was like downhill mountain biking. But that I can kind of I'm waiting for that eureka moment to see what the next like major challenge is. But I still run every day and climbing, and like probably more than anyone in their right mind would ever do. If they're not
Yeah, but that's
training for
boring.
something
That's
specific.
normal. That's not like
Yeah.
for you. That's normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I
So,
still
yeah.
remember talking about when you were looking after the girls and all of your doubles were on a treadmill in the garage and you do like whatever 12 miles at 5 a.m. every day. So Mike was stay-at-home dad for a while, looking after both girls whilst training like a professional athlete. And I remember him saying, like, oh yeah, I probably do like 20 hours a week of training or something. And this was at a time where I was doing like 5 or 6, thinking it was cool. I just couldn't get my head around it. So yeah, I mean, your standard of normal is not normal, I suppose. But yeah.
I'm waiting for you to like send me an email with this crazy race that's like some team or multi-sport event, and you're just send that to me and like sign up, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's something that'll be like a sufferfest for like multi-day. That's what I'm waiting for. That's my next.
Okay.
I just need to find what that is.
I've heard you. We'll find something. We'll find something. I mean, that was one of the other things I was going to touch on was Costa Rica. I know I said about it earlier, but we're going to have to draw things to a close because of some time constraints, and it's a conversation to have another time. But what I will say is, if anyone listening wants to check out, what's Ian's podcast called, Mike? The Talk Ultra podcast. Ian Corliss, where Mike was a guest. I mean, I don't know when was
that was a long time ago. That was like 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah,
it's old, very old.
Well, the Coastal Challenge, anyway, multi-stage trail running race in Costa Rica. Yeah, such a cool event. It's fresh in my mind because it just happened. I think one of the guys who raced in the class mark event that I took part in Girona, I think just won. And some crazy stories. That podcast is an absolute classic, so definitely go and check it out because Mike had quite the experience out there. But we'll have to save that story for another day.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been great to catch up, mate. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you guys got to finally meet. I'm sure it won't be for the last time, and I'm sure we can find a way to drag you back over this way, or even we can head out towards you. I know my dad's been pretty keen on doing the Squamish 50 for a little while now. So he's entered for this year. Well, I don't know if that's public knowledge, but we've said it now. So he should be over in August. He's very excited about it. So we'll have to link up at some point for sure. Yeah,
that'd be great. Thanks a lot for having me on, you guys. It's been really fun. It's like an hour flies by like that.
Oh man, it goes. It's so fast.
Nice to meet you, Mike. And Canada is on our bucket list, so we need to pay it a visit. New Zealand and Canada are still right at the top, so hopefully one day we will meet in person. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's great to put a face to the name.
Yeah, same. It's been good to meet you. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, perfect. Well, let's wrap things up. We'll go from there, and then, like I say, we'll have to finish it off another time. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Hopefully you found that enjoyable, and now you're excited about getting out to the west coast of BC to do some trail running because it is absolutely epic. And if you do, make sure you go to Kappa and buy your shoes. Other than that, I guess we'll sign off for now, and then we'll see you all again in a couple of weeks. All right. Cheers, guys.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, James. Cheers, Mike.